right, so I'm going to start my spill. I'm just waiting on our special guest to join us. And once she does, I'm going to go ahead and add her. Okay, so my name is Shanae Joyce Stringer. I am the visionary behind Women Who Rock. Rock stands for Reign, Obey, Conquer, and Kingdom Build. I held my very first conference, women's conference, in March of this year, and look out for dates for the next conference, the second annual conference in March of next year. I am also an event planner here in South Florida of a company called Black Events, BLAQ Events. I am also the author of my first children's book, which is The Princess and First Day of School. So if you haven't purchased it, please go ahead and do so. Support DM, message me. I do sign copies. They can be shipped or delivered. All right, so jumping right in. So this week we are going to finish our whole segment of dating, and so tonight I wanted to tackle questions that should be asked of the person that you're interested in, whether they're courting you or you're the one doing the courting if you're a man. But part of that, I wanted to include a special guest when we had the opportunity to interact, and she wanted to know about what I was doing. She expressed interest in being a part of this, so I'm definitely appreciative of that. And so I'm just going to have her come in and do her spill, introduce herself, but she's here to answer questions about prenuptial agreements. I know that I have my own mixed feelings, but hopefully after hearing her spill, her talk, her discussion, and her expertise, it will give us some more insight about prenuptial agreements, and then I'll move on to my portion of Worth the Wait. So I'm going to invite her in now. Her name is Attorney Jacqueline Lumpkin Wooden, based here out of South Florida.
Hi there.
Hi. Okay. So
How are you?
Believe I can hear you.
Good.
Good.
You know, I'm technologically challenged, so it was a major milestone for me to be able to join you.
So I really appreciate you and your time on tonight and joining in with my folks and those who, of course, will watch the replay. And so just being able to share your knowledge about a segment that I know nothing about. You know, you hear stories on the news and whatever about prenuptial agreements. So, you know, most people have preconceived notions about them, but hopefully you can help us have a better understanding, and maybe more of us would even consider having a prenuptial agreement as an option. So if you can introduce yourself and just kind of give us a feel about it, and then I can ask you the questions that I sent earlier.
Okay. Well, you know, you asked me a couple of questions prior to this, and as we were discussing the subject matter, basically a prenuptial agreement is also known as an antenuptial agreement, and it's an agreement with two parties when they come together and decide that they want to share nuptials. A prenuptial agreement, which is what is commonly known as, can be an agreement between a man and a woman. It could be an agreement between a same-sex couple. It's just an agreement. It's similar to a business agreement. And we all know that none of us would go into business without a really good agreement outlining the responsibilities of the partners and where they wish to see the business go, and in what direction and how things will be managed, and what happens in case of a breach or a problem. And that's the same energy that we put into designing prenuptial agreements. Some people have the misnomer or the wrong idea that prenuptial agreements are only for the rich and famous, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Some people have the miscommunication that prenuptial agreements are expensive, or that you need an attorney to draft them. Sometimes I've had people come in with the prepared prenuptial agreement and they ask me to review it for them. And of course I review and I check and make sure that there's no violation of the laws in there, because you wouldn't want to have a situation where you've agreed to do something that violates any applicable laws in this state or in this country. So I check for those things. And somebody might say, well, what is that? Well, maybe you have a husband who says that you should sell your body or something ridiculous to all of his friends. Well, of course, that violates the law. So you wouldn't want to agree to something like that because you're never going to get a court to enforce that.
Right.
So why would anyone want to enter into a prenuptial or antenuptial agreement? Oh, by the way, after you're married, you can enter in what's called a postnuptial agreement. That means we've gotten married, we have started to live together as husband and wife, or wife and wife, or husband and husband, whatever the case may be, and we want to start designing our life better. We want to make sure we get some things in writing and understood. Certainly, you can do that. In fact, I suggest that you do that. Why? Because the benefits of that are clear. For example, the best time to figure out how we will handle a problem is when we're in love. So if you're in love, you may ask each other, well, what would it be like if one day we broke up? And then of course you're not going to be able to conceive of that because you're going to think that you're going to feel like you'll be together forever, which is fine. And we certainly hope that for you. But one of the questions I had a young couple ask each other as we sat here in my conference room, I asked them, what does the perfect breakup look like? What does the perfect divorce situation look like to you? And it was weird how the two parties had totally different ideas of what a perfect breakup looked like to them. One of them said, a perfect breakup is one where I get children, I get alimony, I get the house, and I get everything because I make the most money. And of course, the other party was like, really? So if we got a divorce, you take everything? And that other person said, well, yeah, because I make 6 figures and you are just a cop and you don't make that much. And
wow.
I mean, hello, guess what? It got, and that's what the whole plan agreement, like a business agreement, gets people to do. It gets them to start talking. I'm always surprised at how much time people spend figuring out what their vows will be, because they don't want to just go in there and say, to have and to hold from this. They want to write these cute, flowery vows that are specific to their love for each other. Guess what? Those same people, I can almost guarantee you, will not be willing to spend 5 minutes discussing a prenuptial agreement. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad, because I truly believe that the best time to plan for a divorce is when you're happy. And a prenuptial agreement hopefully becomes a piece of paper that you stick in a safe deposit box and never look at again. You just never look at it again because you never run into the problems. Okay. And then one of the questions you asked me was, what kind of things do people put in prenuptial agreements? Well, guess what? I've had people define the terms of infidelity. What do you consider cheating? And I had a wife a fiance say to her future husband, I consider your going on Facebook and having a private inbox message with a female cheating. And of course, he was like, that's not cheating. That's just being discreet. And she says, well, why do you need to be discreet? What do you have to talk about that you can't put on your Facebook wall? He said, well, maybe we're discussing our kids, or maybe we're discussing what we're going to do for Christmas break. She says, well, I think that's a form of cheating because that means you're becoming intimate with someone else via the written work. He never thought that would be a problem in their marriage, but a good thing they talked about it at that point. I had another couple say, well, we should not have our own individual Facebook pages. We should have one Facebook page and the both of us comment or post on that one Facebook page. No private. You don't have a Facebook page and I have one. We have one together with both of our names on it, and let everybody know when they post on here, they're posting to me and you. Okay. And that's fine. You can put that in your prenuptial agreement too. I had another couple tell me the husband said, I want 5 children and I want that in writing. And the wife says, really? I was only planning for a boy and a girl, you know? And so, but it got the people talking. And as you can hear from my theme here, the theme is to get people talking, to get people to share what their value systems are and what they think are important and not so important, because usually marriages fail when people realize they didn't know that person. I was like, I didn't know you were like that. That's one of the biggest things I would hear when I used to be in a divorce attorney. I would hear people say, I didn't think that my husband would ever treat me this way, or I didn't think my wife would ever treat me that way. I've had couples call me and say, did you know she had her own bank account? I thought we had one bank account. I found out one day I was home when the mail came. I saw that she had a bank statement and she has a lot of money in it. I didn't even know about that. Here I am struggling and paying bills and trying to keep things afloat, and she got all this money over here in another account. Well, guess what? If those people had a prenuptial agreement, then maybe she would have had an opportunity to tell him, I think you should have a private account. I should have a private account, and we should have a joint account where all the bills are paid from. That's reasonable. Or I should put a percentage of my income into the marital account. You put a percentage of your income into the marital account, and we operate from that marital account. That seems reasonable to most people when they're in love and going into the relationship and writing pretty fiery vows. But what about a prenuptial agreement that outlines that? Another thing that couples usually fight about in the end, when they didn't plan in the beginning, is when I met him. I'm gonna bash guys for a second here, so I'm gonna do it from a lady's point of view. When I met him, I had my own house, and I sold my house, and I used the money from selling my house to put the down payment on the house that we have together. And now he wants the house split, and I want my money back out, what I put into it. Well, guess what? You never had that type of agreement. You never put it in writing. He never agreed to it. He didn't even know you wanted him to do that, because maybe he would have had an opportunity to say, hey, let's just chill then. Let's not buy a $800,000 house. Let's buy a house that we both can put a down payment into. Or yes, okay, if I'm gonna have to pay you back, then on what terms? Do I have to pay you interest? If I'm paying all the child support, I still have to pay you back? You know, again, questions that could have been dealt with at the beginning when people were so in love. Right. The other question I get all the time is, what happens with the children? Who gets the children? You know, maybe we could have talked about that when we were in love. Maybe in some cases we have husbands who want to be the primary residential parent because maybe that man has a certain type of affinity for taking care of his children, more so than maybe the wife. So again, that could be placed in writing. Some women think, well, if he's not paying child support, he shouldn't get to see the kids. That's ridiculous. No judge is going to enforce that. Yeah, I mean, child support doesn't go with parenting. Parenting is parenting, and financial obligations is a part of parenting. But again, just because you're not paying child support doesn't mean you don't get to see your children. That's ridiculous. So the other thing that people like to say is, well, the reason why he doesn't want to pay child support is because he has a new girlfriend. Well, guess what? If you had a prenuptial agreement that maybe outlined, in case of infidelity or in case you're cheating, you will have to pay X number of dollars in child support, in addition to punitive, like punishment damages or punishment amounts for cheating on me. Or maybe you will waive alimony. You won't get alimony if you cheat, or something like that. Or maybe there's a situation where you can put in your prenuptial agreement that when we divorce for the first year, you will continue to maintain the car insurance, because sometimes couples have one car insurance policy where all their cars are on. And the worst thing that I've seen happen is where one party cancels their spouse's insurance, car insurance. And the person's driving along and they have an accident and they find out they don't have car insurance because their soon to be ex-husband or wife has canceled their car insurance and don't want it on their policy anymore. So those are things, again, you can outline all of that in your prenuptial agreement. I hope I've made it clear that prenuptial agreements basically aren't for the rich and famous only. Prenuptial agreements are great for people who don't have much, people who want to protect the little bit that they do have. As a probate and guardianship attorney, I'm often asked, what happens when I inherit money from, say, my grandma died or my uncle died and left me an inheritance? Does that have to become partly my husband's money too? You know, and again, we can outline those things in the prenuptial agreement or postnuptial agreement to make it clear that, honey, if I inherit $1 million from my grandma or my mom, it's going to be in a separate account. And then the people get a chance to argue about it before they say I do.
That's good, because I'm an only child, so I would need to know that.
Exactly. So yeah, so there are lots of things that you can include, information you can include in your prenuptial agreement. That document can be as detailed or as clear as you want it to be, because it's what you're agreeing to, it's what you want, and it's how you want to design your marriage to be. And it's the most romantic agreement you can do. I would say that I've had prenuptial agreement signings where the people actually start crying because they were like, we're doing this. We're actually planning the success of our relationship right here, right now, in my lawyer's office. Now, another question. Should the parties have their own separate attorneys? Because, you know, attorneys unfortunately have a reputation for messing things up. So, but the law is quite clear that each party should have their own attorney, or specifically in writing, waive their right to have an attorney. I had a prenuptial agreement between a doctor and a cop, and the doctor said, I don't need an attorney. I can figure out what I want to do. If I've made it through 8 years of medical school and residencies, I got this. And that person didn't want an attorney involved. So we had her write a waiver form saying, I know that I have the right to an attorney. I know that my soon-to-be husband is represented by Attorney Wooden, but I don't need an attorney and I don't want an attorney. And I feel secure that all the disclosure statements that he's given me are clear, true, and correct. And we went with that. So you want to make sure that you enter into an agreement knowingly, voluntarily, and with all reservations being wiped away and put aside. Because you don't want a situation where after you go through all of this prenuptial or postnuptial agreement drafting, the person, you end up in divorce court, and your soon to be ex says, I didn't know what I was signing. I never read it. I don't know. I didn't agree. I never would have agreed to that. You know, and that's what people do, unfortunately. And that's why we try to make it as interactive as possible, because then at that divorce time, the other person's attorney can look that person who's denying that they read it in the face and say, well, wasn't it you who decided that the children should live with you? Or wasn't it you who decided that you didn't want alimony? Or wasn't it you who decided what was considered infidelity? You know, and then when they start asking pointed questions, then it gets a little harder to say, I didn't read it. You know, it gets a little harder to deny that you were not actively involved in the drafting of the document. And now, is this something you just go to a lawyer and say, write it, and you walk out? No, this is something where you want your lawyer to maybe do a boilerplate or a whole everything but the kitchen sink type of document, and then you start picking it apart. You start saying, well, let's take that out, let's add this part, and then you, when you finish drafting it, it becomes a document that you can say that you had a say-so in creating, and it becomes a document that you can say that you're comfortable with signing. Mm-hmm. And it's a document that you can say that, yes, I did know what I was signing, and I intend for it to be enforced in a court of law or anywhere else that it may be presented for enforcement. And I think that's basically it. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No. Well, I'll read you some of the comments because I'm pretty sure you probably can't see them. Someone said that, let me go back up. So one of my sorority sisters, and by the way, Miss Jacqueline is a Zeta. One of my sorors said, well, how do you get him to talk without him trying to say something I want to hear? So is it best to have this conversation in the presence of attorneys?
Well, somebody's going to be the first one to hire an attorney. And then if that attorney has any ethics about him or her, that attorney will suggest that the other person hire their own attorney, like I did with the cop and the doctor. And it's up to the person whether or not they want to hire counsel. But certainly, I think that this is a conversation that should be had before the attorney's even called. I just think that they should like that. If you're choosing cakes and colors, you know, you should be able to choose whether or not you want to engage the services of counsel to draft a prenuptial agreement. Okay.
So what happens more frequently, prenuptial or postnuptial agreements?
Usually prenuptial agreements. That's what we see more than anything. And usually the people who decide to engage in a prenuptial agreement, they're people who have things that they want to protect. And sometimes it could be as simple as, I want to protect my right to be able to earn as much money as I want to earn when I'm no longer with you. And I don't want you to keep coming back asking me for more alimony or more child support or all these things after we've divorced. You know, so, you know, it's just sometimes somebody might be in school at the time and they're getting ready to get married. They may want to protect their degree and their earning potential into the future. And they may want to say, well, if we end up in divorce, then, you know, I will only be limited to X number of dollars or X number of things or whatever. A lot of times people think that if I get custody, as they say, if I get full custody of the children, then I don't have to pay any child support. Well, that's not true. That's just not true. But at least with the prenuptial agreement, you can decide who will have the children. Now, one very important question that I haven't seen come up is, can we change it along the way?
Oh, that's good.
Yes, and just like any other agreement or contract, you can certainly amend it and change it from time to time as your needs change from time to time. So, say for example, you're a young couple, and one question I'm going to answer real quick. Somebody said, what's a postnuptial agreement? Caprice Brown said that, Caprice Williams Brown. And a postnuptial agreement is an agreement that you enter into after you've gotten married, post the nuptials. The nuptials is the wedding. And after you've gotten to that point and you're actually married, you enter in what's called a postnuptial agreement. Before you get married, it's a prenuptial or ante, ante-nuptial agreement, meaning before. But I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you were saying, oh Lord.
we're human and it's
late.
Where
are my commenters?
we're human and it's But yeah, so you just you can amend it.
Talking about how you can change it over.
Yes. Say, for example, you're young, no kids, you're just starting out, you do your prenuptial agreement before you get married, and then later on you end up having 3 children. You may want to go back and revisit your agreement based on the fact that now you have these children. Or you are a young couple and you decide that, and later on, maybe 2 years into the marriage, you buy property. You may want to revisit your prenuptial agreement based on the fact that now you have this property. You have investment properties. You started businesses. Like, say, for example, if your soon-to-be spouse is in law school, and when they graduate, and they start their practice, they may want to revisit the issue of the prenuptial agreement and say, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens, and kind of tweak it a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah, you might want to tweak it. I think it's a good idea every now and again to pull it out, look at it, and see where we want to change things. Another thing, people in my age group, 55 and older, is that they have grandchildren now, and they may decide, hey, let's rework our prenuptial agreement now to give more attention to the grandchildren and how we want to provide for our grandchildren. One of the biggest groups that should have prenuptial agreements that don't have them are people who are coming into a marriage with children already. If you have kids already and you're about to marry somebody who maybe don't have children, you need a prenuptial agreement real bad, because guess what? Let me give an example. You and your spouse buy a house. You own it as husband and wife. Okay? You die. You, the person with the children, you die. The spouse who survived you does not have to give your children any part of that house. Wow. That's your spouse's house. But guess what? If you had a prenuptial agreement that said, in case of my death, I want to make sure that my surviving spouse gives my children a percentage of the value of the property that I would have had I survived. It could be something as simple as that. So whatever part, if you're 50-50 owners in the house, then you want your part to go to your children that you had from a previous relationship or previous marriage, and not necessarily 100% to your spouse, who may marry somebody else. Right. And then die. And then guess what happens? That new spouse gets everything. That house. That new spouse gets the house. And if they added that new spouse to the house. So, you would want to make sure that you protect your children in situations like that. So,
Caprice also asked, can a post-nuptial be done anytime during the marriage, even if you've been married for years?
Yes. In fact, the longer you've been married, there's a greater possibility that you know each other better. You know what the person is capable of. You know what the person will stand for or not stand for. You have acquired things, that you may want to, I don't want to say protect from your other spouse, but maybe you want to protect for the benefit of your children or your grandchildren or your parents. I've had arguments. Oh my goodness, I thought these people were going to end up in divorce court because the husband's mother developed Alzheimer's, and he wanted to move his mother into the home with him and his wife. And his wife is like, absolutely not. I don't want to take care of your mom. Put her in a nursing home. Guess what? He's like, I'm not going to put my mom in a nursing home. I would never do that to my mother. And that became the biggest linchpin in their relationship, that I thought they were going to, and I had known them for a while. So I'm like, I can't believe you guys are going to possibly end up in divorce court over whether or not his mom is going to come live with you all, and she's sick, because Alzheimer's is a disease. Right. And they finally worked it out. But guess what? That was a major thing. Again, in a prenuptial agreement, they could have talked about that. And at least in talking about it, you kind of know where your spouse's value system is as relates to parents and moving parents in once they get sick, and taking care of parents and taking care of grandkids. And what if it's later found out the wife can't have kids? Do you want to end up in a Sherry Shepherd situation where your husband uses his sperm to impregnate someone else, and now there's this baby? Should you have to pay child support to a baby that you have no genetics in common with? Again, If Sherry had done a prenuptial agreement, she could have outlined that in her prenuptial agreement and said, look, if the baby doesn't have my DNA, I never have to pay child support for that baby. That we will consider that baby an extramarital baby, like an extramarital affair, you know, and you certainly don't have to pay child support if your spouse goes out and conceives a baby from someone else. You know, that at least that's your idea. There legal things that would say otherwise, but certainly now somebody's going to say, what do you mean by that? Okay, when if a baby is born during marriage, those two parents are considered that child's parents. So if they end up in divorce, those two parents have to pay child support for that child, although everybody knows she went out and had an affair with the pool guy. It doesn't matter. If that child is born to that wife during the marriage, it's that guy's dad. I mean, it's that guy's child, and that guy's the dad. Mm-hmm. Later on, you can fix it, of course, but initially speaking, it's a child born in the bonds of wedlock. So those are just things that people might want to think about and talk about and consider and ask an attorney about before they say I do, to make sure that what they're doing is exactly what they want to have happen. You know, and that they're not getting themselves in a mess. Nobody would go into business with a business partner who's going to ultimately create a mess for them. You definitely shouldn't want to sleep with the enemy and go into a marriage that's going to basically ruin you and ruin your life. Definitely not. And at least, but no, people can still be dishonest. But the more you talk about these things and the more you start putting things in writing, people are less likely to be dishonest. And especially when it comes to signing documents, because people get real nervous when they start signing legal documents. And especially when there's a lawyer involved and they go, oh God, this is going to be legally binding on me, and they get nervous. So there's a presumption that they're going to enter into it with their eyes wide open, as opposed to the pink rose-colored glasses that people have when they say I do.
Right. So I see a lot of people, and some people I know that are married on this feed that are watching and saying that you're sharing a lot of good info. My mom is on here saying I need a prenup.
So, she probably does. So
I obviously am learning a lot. I mean, I was one of those people who really believed that the rich and
it's a Kardashians type thing.
These things, because I'm coming with my pennies, and we're gonna put our pennies together, and we'll just figure it out in divorce court. But it makes sense to discuss these things because it's more than just finances. I think that's the important part. We should understand that a prenuptial covers more than finances. It can also cover your lifestyle, children, and other aspects of the relationship.
Yeah, it could be in a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement. It could be as simple as one person believes that they should lease their vehicles because maybe she wants to drive a brand new Lexus every 3 years. And the husband may feel like that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous to buy a car every 3 years. You know, maybe the husband is the type who give him a 10-year-old Ford truck and he's happy as a lark. You know, but at least going into the marriage, he knows from the beginning that she is quote unquote high maintenance and he's low ability to give her what she wants to have. So, or maybe he has the ability to give it to her, but he's decided that it's a waste and he's about saving, you know. And you know, you may have a spouse who said a prospective spouse who says, I feel like I should be able to buy every new Gucci bag that comes out because that's how I've always been. That's what I've always done. Mm-hmm. And her husband may say, no, that's ridiculous. How are we going to ever build something if all you're doing is giving $5,000 and $8,000 a month to the Gucci shop for your new purses? You know, but at least again, it gets the people to talking. It gets them to sharing what their values are. And then, you know, you can pretty much figure out whether or not you're compatible at the beginning, before you get into it, before you say I do, and then later find out we're not compatible.
Right.
You know, and excuse me, the easiest people to convince to do a prenuptial agreement are, ready for this? Men.
Really?
Men are so easy to convince because most men love a plan. If you give them a plan, they're good. If you tell a man, okay, we'll have 2 kids, and if he agrees to that, he's not looking to have 3. He's
Right.
going to have 2 kids. You know, most guys are very cut dry. At least I know my ex-husband was a very cut dry type of guy. If you tell Johnny, I want a new car every 2 years, he's going to make sure Jackie has a new car every 2 years because he understood it from going in. But if you spring stuff on him at the last minute, he goes, wait, where did this come from? I didn't know you were like that. And that's how you get into divorce court. So, you know, you want to make sure that you speak with your soon-to-be spouse, or you speak to your current spouse about the need to enter into negotiations to draft a good, valid prenuptial or postnuptial, meaning after you're married, agreement. Okay? Especially as we get older and we start trying to organize our lives around how we want to have our properties disposed of or whatever into the future. You know, I have people who come in, they want to do a last will and testament. I tell them that's ridiculous. Last will and testaments are job security for the lawyers. You know, and so why don't you do a trust? Why don't you do a postnuptial agreement? Why don't you do some other vehicle to figure out how you want your property to pass to the next generation? You know, yeah. So, you know, I'm sorry.
I said that was going to be my question. Would a will supersede a pre or postnuptial agreement, or do they work hand in hand?
They can work hand in hand. And in fact, you can agree to something in a prenuptial agreement, and then later, remember I told you how you can amend and have, you can later draft a family trust, or you can draft a family last will and testament, which changes some of the terms that were outlined in the older version of the prenuptial agreement. And what usually will happen is the judge will look at it and say, well, you did the prenuptial agreement 25 years before you drafted this last will and testament. So the last will and testament is probably what the person really wants to have happen with their assets. You know, because maybe the prenuptial agreement was done before you had children, or maybe the prenuptial agreement was done before you had grandchildren. And now you want to do maybe in the prenuptial agreement, you said, I want my wife to have everything. But then you later came back and did a family trust that said, well, I don't want her to have everything. I want to make sure that I provide for my grandchildren. So, right. Yeah. So usually judges are pretty smart at figuring these things out. Because again, they look at the parties, they look at the things that were outlined in the pre or postnuptial agreement. And if they seem like reasonable things, most judges will grant a reasonable interpretation of those things and say that it was valid.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. Thank you for sharing that information. If you have any more questions, that would be the time to put in the comment section, because Jackie's still at work. But I do, in the meantime, if they post, I'll share. I do want to thank you for sharing that information, because that totally opened up my eyes about what a antenuptial or postnuptial agreement is, and know that even me and my little coins now.
And remember, it's not always about the coins. It's about values. It's about what you value and what's important to you and what's important to your soon-to-be spouse. That's what it is. You know, and a lot of this, a lot of these same-sex couples and marriages starting to happen, they should be the second group that should be looking at prenuptial agreements, because we don't know. We don't know what it's going to be like when same-sex couples realize that marriage is a headache no matter who you with, and they start trying to go through divorce court. you know,
Right.
and you know, so that group really needs to look at how they want their assets to be divided, how they want children to be, I guess you could, I don't want to say divided, but who's going to get, you know, custody of children, and if the person has children from a previous relationship, how we're going to deal with those children. You know, these are just life's questions that
Right.
people need to be adult enough to discuss with each other before they go and start saying I do and I love you and all of those things. Well, if you love me, then sign this. You know,
Right.
sign this saying you love me and this is how you're going to take care of me and this is how you're going to take care of our children and this is how you're going to build, we're going to build our wealth together, and this is how we're going to have an everlasting, long and successful relationship.
Right, right. And I think it's important because, as you said, it's essentially a plan. It creates a
It's
plan that kind of guides us on how we will move forward in our marriage and help govern the relationship.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Just for just a quick laugh, I had one where the soon to be husband said, "I expect to have sexual relations at least 10 times a week," and the soon to be wife said, "10 times a week," and he's like, "Yeah." He says that sounds reasonable to me. So, but guess what? Now she knows that her
What?
husband what he's expecting. So, you know, they might have been celibate before they got married, but as of that wedding night, he's expecting 10 times a week. So, but she knows, and she knows what he's expecting. So
Right.
that's it's as simple as that as far as what you want in your prenuptial or postnuptial agreement.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I definitely appreciate your wealth of knowledge and coming
Anytime.
and sharing. And so, those of you who are married, those of you who are engaged, or those of you we're waiting and will eventually be married, please reach out. You do postnuptial agreements, right?
Yes.
Okay, so please reach out to Miss Wooden, attorney Jacqueline Lumpkin Wooden. She can also find her on Facebook. She also has an office here in Broward County. So
Yes.
please reach
In the
out
wonderful in the wonderful city of Miramar.
in Miramar. So
Yes.
please reach out to her. So don't think we've been married 6 years. It's too late. Clearly it's not. But at the end of the day, it's important to have these discussions with your soon-to-be spouse or your spouse so that you all have a better understanding of what's to be expected going forward in your relationship.
That's right. That's right.
Thank
Okay.
you for joining us on tonight.
You're
Um,
very welcome.
and so, honestly, I'm not sure how you would exit out. I don't know.
How about if I just turn it off and
Yes,
go
you will. I'm
and I
gonna.
get to go home now?
Well,
It's
have
been
a
a
safe
long day.
time on tonight. And so, for the rest of you who are still watching, I'm gonna pick up where we left off. And so, I just wanted to say, okay, so there we go. So we were talking about on this segment for the last couple of weeks, we've been dealing with the various aspects of dating. And so this was important to have attorney Wooden join us on tonight because I wanted to talk to you all about questions that needed to be asked of the person that is interested in you. So I will also say if you did not have the opportunity to share that we're on live on tonight, please go ahead and do so. I'm going to be brief because she was really who I wanted to share a wealth of information that I didn't know, but I had to go to the source to get us the information. And so we clearly see with having a prenuptial agreement or postnuptial agreement, it gets us to have conversations, gets us to have discussions about many aspects of our future lives that we plan to have with our future spouses and cover all those aspects in advance. So there should be no real surprises going forward because you've already planned in advance. You planned about, how many kids you wanted or would you expect, parenting, who would divide that up or You know, how would you share your money, your bills, your accounts, if you're going to do so? If you know that, you know, your parents, you may inherit something, you want to be sure that you have a plan going forward to protect your own interests or whatnot. So again, if you haven't had the opportunity to just share that we're on, please hit the share button. And so I'm going to jump into my spill. I won't be before you too much longer. And so this week I said that we would discuss QT&A, which is questions that need answers, and 20 questions that should be asked of your interest. And so I have said it before in previous posts that or videos that when dating, or hopefully most of us are courting, most of us who have the desire of being married, that you're being courted, or the man is, you're courting someone, is that we have a tendency to swim in the shallow part of the pool versus spending some time in the deep end. Or if we do, we don't frequent the deep end a lot of times when it comes to discourse or having conversations to really get to know that person that we're pursuing, for the men, or who's pursuing us when I refer to women. And so, as I said, when we do, it's usually months into the relationship, or sex has already been had, or it would be that emotions and feelings have already grown and you begin to realize, I don't know everything about this person. I don't have all the information that I need. Or maybe they're showing signs that, you know, leads me to be confused about this individual. And so I honestly believe that a lot of people would not have had children with certain individuals, or ended up in situationships or dead relationships or fruitless marriages, had some questions, especially key questions, had been asked in advance. And so I really struggle. I had this conversation with a friend of mine. I really struggle with the belief that when people say that his or her spouse or mate suddenly changed or became someone that they didn't know. And I believe it's not necessarily that that person became a different person, but something caused their mask to fall off. Something caused them to stop presenting their representative, and now they're actually just revealing who they truly are. And so negative traits in people, because obviously it's rarely the reverse, that someone suddenly becomes, you know, nice or suddenly become great. Hopefully that's who they are. That's what has kept you around or attracted you to them. But it's usually, like I said, the opposite, that, you know, all of a sudden these negative traits appear. They become like an illness. It starts off with simple symptoms like a bad attitude here and there, or they're a little stingy with money, or they only share when asked, or they're always busy, or before all of these things, they're just little symptoms that begin to show up before it blows up into a full-blown infection that now has infected your current relationship. And so when the disease or the negative traits have set in like the plague, the mask has fell off, their representative is nowhere to be found, is when people want to leave. They want to separate, now they want to divorce. And I believe, had you addressed the symptoms, not just treated a symptom or managed the symptoms, but actually get to the course or the source of that symptom, then it doesn't get out of control. And so let's be clear, some people really just have negative attributes. I mean, we all do. We just tend to dress them up with words like, it's my imperfection, or that's just my flaw. And if you desire a relationship with them, especially those who you may be bringing children in the world with this individual, or you just simply desire a long-term partnership or covenant with that individual, it's important that you nip it in the bud immediately. You address it. Because the longer you wait, the more time you give that cancerous cell to now metastasize, and now it's just out there, it's affecting every aspect of your relationship. And so the simple purpose of a question is to get an answer or response. And so the teacher and me always get definitions so that we have a clear understanding. And so the definition of an answer is a thing said, written, or done to deal with or as a reaction to a question, statement, or situation. And so those of you who desire marriage, that period of courtship should be treated like a job interview, with the understanding that unlike corporate America, you're not looking necessarily just fill a void, especially with the comfort of knowing that, anytime I want to remove and replace them, I can. Employees obviously can do that because there's usually no emotional attachment with your business entity, the corporation itself, and its employees. Maybe between, the hierarchy, you may get close to your supervisor, you may be close to those under you, but as far as the business itself, there is no emotional attachment. So if they have to let you go, it's just considered business as usual. But when it comes to interviewers, the interviewer usually already has a set of questions that they have prepared prior to the interview. And they're usually the one asking the interviewer to also share some questions as well. Like, don't just be, responding to my questions, but they usually ask, do you have any questions for us at the end of your interview? And so during your courtship, both parties should be asking questions of one another. Ladies, we're naturally inquisitive, so we're usually the ones asking questions anyway. Men tend to be natural observers. In fact, in having a conversation with the gentleman, that's one of the things he said is like, I don't really feel the need to ask a lot of questions. I just believe, it's just going to be revealed. It's going to show up if they're, a bad person or they have negative traits. And so, what's done in the dark, we hear that saying, what's done in the dark eventually will come to light. And that's true. It's usually the case. But I'd rather it be revealed to me in week 1, month 6, than after we have kids together, and surely after I've said I do, especially with the belief that, married one time, one and done, this is forever, no divorce, right? And so if you recall in my first video, I believe, of Worth the Wait, where I said that the purpose of dating, which for us that desire marriage, courting, is to collect data or information. And so data is defined as facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis. You are to take the data from your questions, their behavior and actions, your observations, and analyze all of that information and measure it up to what the Word of God says, right? As well as what your expectations for your spouse, because my expectations for a spouse may be different from your expectations for a spouse. But at the end of the day, as believers, we need to be sure that they also align with what we know the Word of God says about a spouse. So for those of you who may not know exactly what the Word of God says as it relates to the role of a husband or the role of a wife, I would say look to Ephesians 5 for the men, Proverbs 31 for the women, as well as Titus 2 verses 3 through 5 as well. And more importantly, on either side, you want to be sure that they reflect what love is. Do they reflect what is stated in Corinthians 13, 4 through 5? And so when you get past what's your favorite color or how do you like your steak cooked, you get to know the fabric that makes them who they are. And so the person courting me will understand that I appreciate you having titles. I'm appreciative that you may even have property and that you even have money. But if all that is stripped away, who are you? The person that will court me will know that's what I'm after. Who are you when all that's gone? When your friend's not around, when your mama not around, who are you? And that's what needs to be asked. The questions that you need to ask need to cipher them down to who really are you. Yeah, you have the title. You may be a boss. You may be a CEO. You may be getting money. You're hustling. You're grinding. You may have 2 or 3 properties. You may have 3 or 4 cars. Okay, but that doesn't make you who you are. Those are tangible items. But who are you at the core? Who are you under the name brand clothes, the fancy shades, and your proper English? I want to meet someone at their core, and I want to be transparent that they know me at my core. Outside of, Woman Who Rock, and obviously my thing is I want to be transparent anyway. What they see here is what they'll get when I'm not on here. But really, who am I outside of the event planner, outside of the teacher, outside of the student, outside of the author? Who am I at the core? If you took all my titles away, who am I? And so thanks to many of you that are watching or that will watch, in some of the groups that I'm in, you all gave me some feedback when I post, what are some questions that you would want to ask of the person that is interested in you? And that goes, is gender neutral. Again, because both parties should be asking questions of one another. And so I compiled, I believe I narrowed it down to about 20 questions that should be asked. And they're not the only questions that you should ask, but they're surely a start. And so I want to jump back to, I always like to bring the biblical. And I thought about a point in time or individual where a lot of questions were asked, or there was a, correspondence of questions between two parties. And I thought about Moses. We know that Moses may not have fit the profile for most of us of perfection, but obviously he was still used by God, and God equipped him to do the job. And when I say equipped, even if that means equipping him with other individuals to ensure that what his mission was going to be accomplished. And so you notice all throughout Exodus, the lifetime that we hear, the lifespan of Moses, we see that God gave Moses very clear instructions to follow, even provided examples of how, to do certain things. And yet we still found that Moses had questions. Even when he was tired of the people and their complaints, he still was willing to ask questions to God. And so I want us to understand that when God asks us questions, it's that he's asking for transparency. And we see that when God asked Adam, where was he in the Garden of Eden? It's not that he didn't know. God is everywhere. He's omnipresent. He knows where you are. But the reason he was asking is because he was wanting transparency. When God asks you a question, he is wanting transparency. He already knows the answer. He just wants to have that vulnerability with him, that you're willing to be honest and upfront. Why? Because he knows you. He created you. So he knows, he's ordered your steps. He knows what situations you would be in. He's just looking for you to respond with the truth. But I see that when Moses was asking questions, I don't necessarily believe that he was asking questions because he lacked understanding, or which is comprehension, insight, or good judgment. I believe that Moses did have all those things, but what it was is that he was seeking clarity. And clarity is the quality of being certain or definite, or the quality of being clear. And so as you read Exodus, Moses often asked questions, and when he was given the answers, he had peace. He had peace about what God said. If God said it, he went and did it. He didn't falter. He didn't divert. He didn't consult Aaron. He didn't consult the other elders. He didn't consult the people of Israel. Once he got his answer from God, he had peace with that answer, and he proceeded with the instructions that he was given. And so I want to say this. I want to preface these questions that when you get the answer from these individuals, and you make your observations, and you allow God to reveal that individual to you, be at peace with what they stated. Seek God for clarity about what they stated or what they showed you, and proceed accordingly and appropriately. Because you don't want to go back and be like, well, God, how did you let me end up with him or her? God, why am I attached to him or her? Why are they this person? I don't know. No, God gave you the opportunity. God will give you the opportunity to see them. God will reveal them to you. It's up to you to, one, take them for who they are, who they display themselves to be. God may say that, they're still a work in progress. Be patient. That may be what he tells you. Or God is like, this is what it is. Now, you have free will to connect with them, or let them go and let me do the choosing, so that you don't have, that you're not having peace about who that person is, or who that person is displaying themselves to be. And so I divided the questions into 4 categories. The first category is faith. So the first question I had, and it's kind of like a 2-part. The first question I would suggest, especially as believers, I can't stress it enough, as believers, You are to be connected with a fellow believer. You are not to be unequally yoked. So be obedient to the word believers. Some things you just don't compromise. We can compromise on, are we going to keep the temperature at 76 or 80 degrees in our house? We're not about to compromise is you going to mosque and temple and I want to go to Baptist University on this rock. That's not going to be a compromise, because now it's getting ready to infiltrate every other facet of our lifestyle, because for many people their faith infiltrates every aspect. It dictates their culture, and you as a believer, it should dictate your moral system, your value system, how you operate as well. So the first question I would suggest you ask, not necessarily in this order, but the first question is, are you saved? And do you believe in God? Because people say yes, but then they have no idea what that means. They never confessed their sins or repented. They never stood at an altar. They just like, I believe in God, and that's it. Second question is, who do you honor? Third question, how would you describe your relationship with God? Because a lot of people say, I know God, but there's no evidence. Look for fruit. There should be evidence that they have a relationship with God. Number 4, do you attend church? Would you attend church? I think that's important. It's important as believers that we fellowship. Some people may believe that, it doesn't matter that they go to church. But I think that at some point, you're going to be attending church service for something, whether it's somebody's baptisms, whether it's a wedding, Easter service, watch night service. At some point, believers attend church. I like to believe at some point in their lifetime. And so you want to know, is that person going to be joining you, or are you going to be sitting in the pew alone? And number 5, do you pray? I believe it's so important for any believer, period, that they have a prayer life. And so you want to know if they too have a prayer life. You're going to ask them, do you pray? I'm not saying dictate to have them, prove it. I'm going to time you for 30 minutes. Let me see how you flow. I'm not saying do all of that. But it's a start. Now, where you take it from there is up to you, but it is a start. When I think about questions relating to family, one of the questions is, what is your view on traditional gender roles? And do you know, it's the second part, do you know what your role is? And do you know what my role is? Because you may get with somebody and they're like, my mama cook, my mama clean, my mama work. She made sure we had lunch. Even on Saturday, she was up making breakfast and fresh lunch. We didn't eat anything out the can. My mom didn't microwave anything. You want to know, because they may say, well, that's what I grew up doing, and that's what my mama did, so I expect you to do the same. You may have some young women who will say, well, in my house, my dad paid all the bills. My mama never worked. So when I get married, I don't expect to work, and I expect you to pay all the bills. So you want to know what is their take on roles in a relationship, especially roles in marriage, and what is their aspect on traditional gender roles. Second question, what was your parents' relationship like? The reason why I believe this question is important is because many people mirror what they see. So if they're like, my mama and daddy was knocked out, fighting, dragged out every day. It was just horrible growing up. It was literally like having PTSD going home. You would want to know that, because that may affect or have impacted them, especially if they haven't talked to anybody about it, or there may still be some unresolved issues from that. It may lead to them not even having a good relationship with their parents. So you want to know whoever raised them, because it may not have even been their parents, but whoever raised them, you would want to know what was their relationship like, because likely that has impacted or influenced the relationship that they will cultivate. Third question, who has provided a model for what love is or looks like to you? They may obviously know that whoever raised them wasn't a good example, but maybe they look at, Family Matters. Maybe that's who they say they want to model their relationship like. Person I talk to say they love The Notebook, and so they want a relationship like what they saw in the movie The Notebook. So you want to know what is guiding what they believe love is and what love looks like, so that you have an understanding yourself, because it may be greatly divergent. And so you want to know, like, if that's your definition of love or a loving relationship, or those who like those loving, let me address this here. So, for example, we know that Gucci Mane, I don't know his real name, and Keisha Kayor just got married, had this lavish wedding, beautiful, lovely, over the top platinum wedding, right? And so in this group I'm in, people posted that, it actually was a man who posted that, oh, women, you need to be like Keisha Kayor. You need to be that ride or die chick. But then in the smaller caption, it talks about, yeah, he was on drugs and he had to go to rehab and he was out in public with other women and he went to jail in the midst of their relationship. And through all of that, she stuck by him. And we need more women like that. Foolishness. Because some people will go and say, well, if they can do that and she can stick by him by that, then why you leaving me because I'm raising my voice? That's Keisha Kayor and Gucci Mane's ministry. That don't have to be your testimony to get down the aisle. Nobody have to embarrass you. Nobody have to shame you. Nobody have to put you all out there and disrespect you to get you down the aisle. That's not ride or die, in my opinion. Ride or die, or what should say, ride or live partner should be someone that respects you, that honors you, even outside of your presence. Someone that you see longevity with, that no matter what happens in terms of, life's ups and downs, trauma, deaths, birth, loss of job, promotions, winning the lottery, filing bankruptcy. That to me is the longevity. That's your ride or live partner. Somebody that's totally disrespecting you, not honoring you. Could you stay? What does that mean? If you want to stay, that's your business. That's up to you. But don't feel that you have to prove to them that you're worthy, to prove to that you're good. They shouldn't have to hurt you or harm you in order to get you to stay, or for you to feel like, well, this had to happen. And if I just stay with them in the midst of this embarrassment, because that has to be embarrassing, that makes me a good woman. That don't define if you're a good candidate, if you are a good candidate to be a spouse. By sticking with somebody in all their mess. You don't have to put up with somebody's mess in order to be a wife or in order to be a husband. And if you leave, that doesn't make you a bad person. Because everybody can't handle that. And not everybody, and I'm not going to suggest from me to you, you can say Sinead said that, I'm not going to tell you have to stick by somebody that is cheating on you, that is dealing with all these addictions, dealing with all these problems, in and out of jail, totally public embarrassment. They're not well put together themselves. They're not fully developed themselves. You don't have to stay. Now, if you choose to, that's your choice. If you feel that God has called you to that ministry, then that's your business. But I'm not going to tell you that you have to do all that in order to get to the finish line or get to the goal of marriage. Number 4 is, do you have children? That's an important question. Do they have children? And second parter, if they say yes, they have children, you need to know, are you active? And you may have to define what active means. Like not just football season and you go to every game, because that's only about 10, 12 weeks out the year. There's 52 weeks. Active as in, during a week. If they have a program at school, are you there? If they have an award ceremony, are you there? If they broke a bone, are you going to the hospital? What do you define active, being an active parent meaning? What does active parenting mean to you? And then, of course, most importantly, are you providing financial support? And it may not be that they have a child support order, but you want to know, how are you providing for this child? Because why? You too may have a child, and you want to know how you finance them, and more importantly, are you able to finance them? And if we have a child, are you then able to finance our child? And number 5, how would you describe parenting or the role of a parent? Because some men are like, you have this baby, you're going to be stuck with this baby, you got to breastfeed the baby, I might change a diaper on Wednesday and Friday, but the rest of that is you. You want to know what parenting looks like. Or she may be the uninvolved parent, right? She may be like, I'm gonna have this baby because you want the baby, but I expect that on weekends I'm free because I'm with this baby Monday through Friday. So don't be trying to hang out with your boys NFL Sunday. No, it's you and your baby weekend, right? It's you and your baby Saturday, you and the kids Sunday. You want to know what parenting looks like to them. How do they define parenting, or the roles they expected each other will have, you all will have as parents. And then the third category is finance. Yes, when you're dating, you should talk about finance. Don't wait till marriage to talk about finance. Don't wait till I do. Don't wait till the pretty proposal that you post on Facebook. Yes, I will like your post, but I'm going to hope that you talked about finances in advance. Number one, you want to ask them, are you employed or entrepreneur, and is it legal? I hate to say that we have to ask that question, but we really do. Is it legal? I can even confess, so a couple months ago, it's about 3-4 months ago, I was shopping. I went to go buy something. Actually, I went to buy something for Lakeisha, and this guy was like walking so fast next to me. I was in my zone. It was hot. I just wanted to go to the store and get the item and leave. And so they approached me. They're like, gosh, why are you walking so fast? I didn't even know they were talking to me. I thought they were in a rush too. And so had a conversation within 24 hours. We had a phone conversation. What do you do? Oh, you a pharmacist, a street pharmacist. Okay, it was nice talking to you. Delete and block. Delete and block. That's not my ministry. Nope. You have to ask. You just have to ask these questions because you don't know and you don't want to make no assumptions, right? And you don't want to put yourself in situations that you can avoid. Second question is, do you have debt? It's okay to ask that question in your dating phase. Do you have debt? Most people do. I mean, a house can be considered debt until it's paid off. Car, is considered a debt till it's paid off. So most people usually do have debt. And you want to know, if so, what's the source? Like I will say it here. I do have debt. Majority of my debt is student loans. I would say 90%, probably even 95% of any debt that I have is student loans. I don't have a problem sharing that. I do expect to pay Sally Mae, and God gonna do his supernatural thing to reduce that anyway. But I don't have a problem sharing that information. Number 3, how would you describe your credit worthiness? Is it like off the charts, like you could go and get anything, you got that black card credit? Or is it like, I don't even bother applying for anything because my credit is lower than the floor, right? You want to ask these questions. You want to know because you want to know what you're getting yourself into, especially if you're seeking them for a relationship long term. And I'll put this disclaimer: don't necessarily cut somebody off because they have bad credit. It's too many people out here that are getting their credits fixed. I mean, legitimate companies, legitimate credit advisors, financial advisors that are willing to help you. It don't cost you $1 million to get your credit fixed. So don't dismiss. I'm just putting that out there. That's up to you. That's a big thing for you. But I wouldn't necessarily completely dismiss the individual because their credit score may not be good or excellent. It can be fixed, okay? Have those conversations with them. Connect them with somebody. You may know a friend that provides such a service, so be willing to connect them with them. Like, listen, I eventually want a house. I eventually want to, apply for larger loans or, look for investors. And so we come together, or we, go together, married, and have businesses. We need to build our credit up. So I need you, before we walk down the aisle or jump the broom, to get your credit together, or both of us. It could be both of you doing it together. And so number 4, what are your plans for your career or business? In 1 year, and I would even say in 5 years. Reason being because they may be content working on the warehouse floor. And you want to know, like your pay may go up $1 or $2 a year. Is that going to be sufficient for the type of lifestyle that you intend to have or that you desire to have? Or do you want to know, like, you're studying so that you can get a promotion, to get another certification that's going to bring an increase. Or if they have a business and maybe they're working, maybe they want to transition into full-time entrepreneurship. You want to know what that looks like, because as women, God has called us to be helpmates, right? And so as helpers, we help birth visions. That's why we have wombs. We help bring visions to manifest. And so in doing so, if you go in covenant and you join with this individual, by you knowing those goals, you can decide, can I help you with that vision? And what role will I play in that? And even, before covenant, there may be some people that I'm connected to that can help you with that. I'm going to bring you into my circle, into my connections, give you access, basically, that can help you with those goals. Maybe you need a updated resume. Maybe you need some extra skills with grammar. Maybe it is that they want to go back to school and you may have a connection, or it's simply helping them with the application. So don't let these things make you be fretful, but at least you have an understanding of what you're getting yourself into. Number 5 is, what's the purpose of the money you earn or intend to earn? I had to think about that question, but the reason why I asked that question is, if a person who works or has a business and their only motive is to acquire money, I consider that a red flag, because then that makes me wonder, do you idolize money? And we know that we're not to have idols, right? Our God is a jealous God. And so if you're just doing things just to say you have money in the bank, I'm a hustler, or I'm a grinder. No, I need to know that the money that you earn or the money that you intend to earn has purpose. I'm going to be looking for someone that's telling me is that I want to leave a legacy. I want to create generational wealth. I want to take my business and grow franchises. I am putting this money, I have this second business, or I'm expanding my enterprises so that I can have a decent 401k or emergency savings plan. That's the answers that I personally am going to be looking for. If you're just telling me like I'm just working so I can pay bills, that's not good enough. First of all, God didn't call us to just work and pay bills. Go to work, do our job, come home, sleep, do it all over. God didn't call us to that. God has called us to do more. He owns it all. We're his children. Therefore, we already know we have an inheritance. So if you're just working just to have money, or to just say that I could buy cars, clothes, and jewelry, for somebody like me, that's not going to work. I need more than tangible items. I do want to create generational wealth. I do want to leave a legacy. I want my great-grands to have things, and to have access and things already in position for them. And so I do the work now. That's where my money is going to. That's the investment I put in myself, so that I can invest in their future. So you want to know what's the purpose of their money. And then relationships is the last segment of questions. Number 1, you have to ask this question: are you single? Because there will be people that approach you and there's nothing single about them. They could have a whole family, and they will still approach you. And so you want to know, are they single? And more importantly, what is their definition of single? Because your definition of single may not be their definition of single. Legally, we know that single is someone that is unmarried. But some people will have a whole family, not married, but have essentially built a household, have family, kids, and a girlfriend or a fiance, and still will approach you. So technically they are single, but clearly they're in a relationship. So you want to know, are they single, and how they define single. 2, what kind of relationship are you seeking? Are you just wanting somebody you can hang out with from time to time? Are you just looking for a friend? Are you looking for marriage? You want to know what is their outcome? What is the goal of relationships for them? Number 3, get it personal. What are your intentions towards me? I can't worry about Jill, Susie, Keisha. We talking about me. When you're dealing with me, when you're approaching me, when you're conversating with me, what are your intentions towards me? Because we not wasting time. I need to know what is your end goal with me. What do you hope to be the outcome between you and I? And number 4, what about me interests you? Don't tell me about my looks. I'm beautiful and pretty and got a nice shape. That's okay. I know that. I see that every day, and that's not being shallow. But what about you? What about me makes you want to pursue me? Because a lot of people give you real shallow answers. Oh, you smart. You talk well. You seem to have yourself put together. You got a job. You have a car, your own place. No, that's not good enough. What about me? What about me specifically interests you? And number 5, what does submission mean to you? Because men, I hate to put it out there, men love talking about submission. You're supposed to submit to me. The Bible says submit to me, but they don't like to read. You know how we do and read scripture, read that first line. We don't read the rest of the verse, or read the bottom line and we forgot to look at the top. Don't do that. The Bible tells us that we're to submit one to another, actually. We're both to submit ourselves to each other. So you want to know, what does that look like? And let me put this out there as well. You don't submit to boyfriends. You don't submit to girlfriends. And let's get out of that girlfriend, boyfriend ministry. You are wives. You are husbands. You may not have a spouse, but that is what God has called you to be. So operate as such. And they will treat you as such. And they can handle that, they will walk away. Trust and believe. But you want to know what submission looks like and what does that mean to them. How do they define submission? Because some of it may shock you, may blow your mind, it may make you question a lot of things about that individual. So you just want to be careful about what you get into. You don't want to get married and then like submit to me mean we gonna have sex 10 times a week and you gonna do all the cooking and you gonna do all the cleaning and you don't question me. And that's there may be their definition of submission. You want to know. Maybe it don't align with what you know it to be or what the Bible says, the Word of God says. And so that's my spiel for tonight. And we are closing this dating courtship aspect. Next week, Monday, I think Tuesday is actually Halloween. Monday we'll take a break, but we're coming back with a whole new series. And so brace yourselves, because I really had to pray about this next series, this next segment of conversation, these discussions that we're going to have. But I'm willing to be bold and I'm willing to put it out there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about sex. It's time for the body of Christ to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it in church, but the church members having sex. Some of the people in the pulpit having sex with the members. So why not talk about it? It's not going anywhere. God created it so that we can procreate, and it's something to be enjoyed with your spouse. So we need to discuss sex. And so we're going to talk about sex in the next segment of Worth the Wait. So I do appreciate those of you who have stayed and come on, and those of you who will watch the replay. Please hit the share button. And as always, as I always tell you, know that you are worth the wait. That what you're seeking and praying for is worth waiting for. And so know that you are not a commodity. You're not a car. You don't have to be chest driven to know that what your value is, and know that you perform well, and know that you are worthy. You do not have to be test driven. That goes for men and women. You've been called to be a helpmate, women. Men, you're called to be the head of a household. Operate as wife and husband. Forget the ministry of boyfriend and girlfriend, and court. Be willing to court each other. Courtship is important if you want to be married. It has purpose. Be intentional about it so that you're not wasting your time and you're not allowing yourself to be attached to people you were not assigned to. And so that's my message for tonight. As always, I pray for each and every one of you. And I love you, and I thank you for your support in this effort, in this ministry. Good night.